I'm here with Capital Budget Chair Sam Wakeman to talk about Article 8, the capital budget article on this year's warrant. Thanks for joining us, Sam.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So one of the key parts of the town's financial management has been a really robust capital plan. Most importantly, in the fact that there's been a stable amount of money being used every year, and there's a minimum amount that the town invests because it's critical to maintain our infrastructure and our equipment and our assets, our capital assets. Because again, one of the old, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. An ounce of repair is worth a pound of replacement. So, and I know that we've had over the last, and this started long before I got here, but over the last 7 years, we've really done a very robust job of also enhancing the process, tweaking it, getting more information, starting the process a little bit earlier. So even as we face the crisis we do today, it's really important for the folks at home to know how important the capital plan is and how the projects that have been vetted here are really important to the town's service provision and to our public safety and to just maintaining the incredible assets we have.
I would agree with that. The capital budget has undertaken a process of trying to prioritize different requests and puts great emphasis on maintaining existing assets so we don't run into a forced major replacement of a piece of equipment or a building that we haven't maintained, which gets to be more expensive in the long run. And we put more maintenance money into things that we don't maintain properly, and therefore that costs the town more.
So this year's plan, which was, again, we started the vetting of this back last fall, started the conversation, started the discussions, and unfortunately, as we were really nearing the finish line, the public health crisis came and everything kind of froze. That said, we've picked up the conversation and we've been talking for a good solid month at least again, and now we're in the home stretch. And I know that there are two distinct aspects to Article 8. One is the enterprise funds, and those are funds that come from the ratepayers, from those funds, and they go back into the fund. So the projects that are there for water are being funded by the water department to improve the water system. And then the same thing with sewers. The projects in the sewer that the sewer fund proposes are being paid for by ratepayers out of the sewer.
Yes, capital budget's major thrust in looking at projects for the two enterprise funds is to make sure that they're managing their financial balance sheet and income statement in a way that they will not have to come back to the town to ask for more money because they have a deficit. We went through this back in the 2006, 2007 timeframe, and we really don't want to go back there again. But I will say that both enterprise funds understand this and they are managing things well.
In fact, I'm sure that both funds actually have their own capital stabilization funds. So both water and sewer are putting money into their capital stabilization and their reserve funds so that they can pay cash. I know that they actually do pay cash for some of their projects.
Right.
So I guess without jumping over those, I guess we spend a little bit more time on the general fund projects, and there's a number of them. And so is there any that jump out that you want to talk about today, Sam?
Well, I'll give first a brief overview that we had originally, before the pandemic hit and before the shutdown hit, we had about $3 million worth of requests. We felt we might be able to fund about 2 million of those, but we hadn't worked through them at all. Once the pandemic hit, Chris, the town manager, went back to the various departments and asked, what do you absolutely need? Because the town wasn't sure where financially they were going with a close down like this and a lack of revenue. So what we're recommending is a limited list of items which we feel we can afford and still leave flexibility once we figure out where we're going. I would expect that the special town meeting in the fall will be much more robust in terms of capital spending, because hopefully at that point we'll know where things are going. Right now we're a little bit in Never Never Land. So that's the best way I can express it. We're looking at spending in cash about 812,000, and then an additional 659,000, which at this point we would propose borrowing, although that could change depending on the financial outlook of the town. But we feel this is the most conservative way we can deal with what the requests are that we have.
And actually, just to piggyback on your point there, so the authorization to borrow isn't something we do immediately. What it does is it provides flexibility for cash flow, to maintain cash flow. And these are only, and again, that only covers some very expensive pieces of equipment. There's a four-wheel loader from DPW, which is a very expensive and a very long-lasting piece of equipment. The one we're replacing is 35 years old. So I think we've gotten the useful life out of a 1985 piece of equipment. And the ambulance, they're on a kind of a 12-year cycle, a 6 and 6. So what we're doing is we're replacing a 12-year and an old ambulance. And again, those two projects I think are the core of that proposed borrowing. Correct, Sam?
Yes, and the ambulance, we also have to replace the power cot load system, which the ambulance, the 12-year-old ambulance coming offline does not have. So that's an added expense to the ambulance, bringing it up over 300,000. But if we do not continue to replace equipment, we end up spending too much money on maintenance and also loss of use of the equipment and maintaining it, which is sort of an unknown and unseen cost, but drives up the expenses of the town.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really, well, sometimes you can pick up a piece of highway equipment on a quick rental if you need to. There's no place to rent a fire engine or an ambulance or a fully fitted out police cruiser typically. And again, and without going into super great depth, there are pretty robust replacement schedules. I know the fire departments goes out 20 plus years. The police department goes out many years. And again, there's a replacement cycle that's been well vetted. In fact, we've done some deep dives into some of these the last few years, if I recall, Sam, particularly on the public safety side. And I know that Public Works, which has done really an admirable job of MacGyvering, and I'm sorry to call it that, but that's just what I call it, based on that the TV character, of the equipment to last as long as possible. They're starting to get around to a little bit more of proactive replacement too. It's great to have a piece of equipment that'll last 30 or 35 years. By the same token, you don't want it to be on its last legs, so you're scrambling. You want to have a little time to be able to price it out and get a good piece of equipment. So, so they do an admirable job. And again, and also these replacement schedules are pretty well vetted. There's a lot of conversations. You folks on capital budget, Sam, asked the departments lots of questions. You want a lot of alternatives. So when we get to this point, these have been looked at from about every angle possible.
True. Well, that's our job, is to vet these out and to ask questions and try to determine what the need is. Over the past several years, we've been pretty well able to get a good police car replacement schedule going, and to take cruisers coming offline before they die and utilize them in less, I would say, less used areas, so that they're not as critical if something happens to them, and thereby extend their life and be as efficient as possible. Same with the fire department, although they have less, I would say, immediate or emergency use of their vehicles. They need to be available and they need to be in good working condition, and they've done a good job of working on their replacement schedule.
So the projects that are on the list, and it's a shorter list than we often have. It ranges from, as we just discussed, some of this heavy DPW equipment. Any highlights you want to jump out here, Sam?
Well, look, most of what we have here is really maintenance type of projects. They're not a lot of new spending. It's maintaining what we have or trying to make what we have more efficient in its use. The generator for elder affairs is a full replacement of the generator. There is some indication we may not have to spend all of that, may be able to repair what we have, but we don't know enough yet. So we're trying to be proactive. The schools are all essentially repair items or maintenance of existing commitments that we've made, i.e. the bus lease, and then working on the seawalls and the South Main Street culvert to keep those going, and the road maintenance program, which seems to be working reasonably well at this point.
So basically what we have here are things that are both critical equipment, and in some cases, it's important that we get into the queue as soon as possible. The ambulance takes typically, in the best of times, 6 to 12 months to get, and as soon as we can get on the line, we'll be there. I was given the apocryphal, well, it wasn't an apocryphal, it was a true story about how town meeting apparently in 1941 in the spring approved an ambulance, which didn't arrive until 1947 or 1948. A little thing interrupted it, World War II, and all the production lines stopped making fire engines. We're obviously not in a situation like that. That said, a number of assembly lines in a lot of parts of the country have pivoted to other items. So, and police cruisers are most certainly something that's in great demand anyway. So it's important that we maintain our as you pointed out, Sam, we maintain our assets so they don't fail on us when we need them, and we're not spending an inordinate amount of money to repair something when it's really not worth it. And the repair work of the schools, again, some of these things are a couple of big ones over at Deer Hill, retiling all the corridors, which is something that's been talked about in the maintenance teams for facilities. Has done a good job of figuring out what has to happen, and also repairing the windows. It's one of those unfortunate realities. When the building was designed, the windows kind of stopped opening and closing very easily. I think you and I have both seen that. And Nick Berardi and his team kind of worked out with a contractor a solution. So rather than have to replace all the windows, they're just replacing the internal mechanisms so they'll all open and close, because the windows themselves are fine. They just weren't opening and closing particularly easily.
Right, they have to replace the balances that control the up and down of the windows.
Right, which is, again, it's smart money. It's smartly spent money, because those windows have many years of useful life in them. Of course, if you can't open them, they're not particularly useful. So it's definitely a great, an example of how having a very skilled town team in the facilities department working with the school folks and capital has really made a really big difference in stretching our dollars very effectively.
And an item like the courtyard doors, they essentially are leaking because of the way they were initially installed, and that's causing further damage. So if we replace those, we will reduce the amount of damage to the building, or hopefully eliminate it. The corridors to be retiled. We have tiles coming up, creating a safety hazard. The air conditioning in the band rooms is to make the use of those rooms more efficient. And of course, the bus lease is something we looked at when we moved from owning our own buses to leasing them to reduce the long-term maintenance costs, and that seems to have worked quite well.
So again, I think we have a pretty robust plan here. It's been very well vetted, and again, my thanks to you, Sam, and all the members of the Capital Budget Committee have given so much time and energy to vetting these projects, to literally doing field trips at some cases, including going down to look at pieces of equipment, meeting with departments, and to all the staff who worked so hard to pull this together. And as you point out, there are a number of very worthy projects that we just can't get to today that we hope to be able to come back to in the fall when we have a little bit better idea where things are going. So the capital plan in Article 8, very well vetted, very comprehensive, very important to the town for service delivery, for the schools, and just to maintain our infrastructure. Any closing words on this, Sam?
Well, I think it's a conservative capital plan, and I would urge the voters to approve it. If you have any questions, certainly ask them, and we'll give the best answers we can to you.
All right. Again, thank you very much, Sam, and we'll see you back on Tuesday, June 16th, 6 p.m. at the Music Circus. Thanks.
And we also have a capital budget meeting Monday night to take up $400,000 for the sewers for their filtration at the sewer plant. So if you want to join us, it'll post it on Zoom and we will be there.
Excellent. So I'll definitely see you Monday. That's right. I'll see you Monday, and everyone will see both of us for sure on Tuesday. So again, thank you, Sam. Appreciate your time.
Welcome. Thank you, Chris.